Who's that? Commander Claw. Who's bad? Commander Claw. Welcome to the first official deck tech of Storm, Force of Nature. I'm so excited to bring this deck tech to you, Commander players, because I think most deck builders actually underestimated how amazing she really can be. Quote unquote, yeah, she's broken. Yeah, she's break. Oh, you can break her. Cool. I feel like that word is so, loosely used. What does it mean? Not every deck builder is the same. So I just want to tell you, get excited because I like to build decks that are very interactive, gutsy, randomization, and, gamble, like the card gamble for one red mana. Yeah, so enjoy this deck tech. I am Commander Claw, Storm Force of Nature, Temur Commander on a 3/4 body, Mutant Hero. And while you're watching the video, make sure you look for all the flavorful content that I've snuck in there. Let me explain the Commander and her abilities. Okay, so y'all know the bad girl. Her name is Storm. She's got Flying and Vigilance. Remember, Flying and Vigilance. She does not tap to attack. So, when you use the Ceaseless Tempest ability, whenever a Storm deals combat damage to a player, the next instant or sorcery spell you cast a turn has Storm. So she has to go to combat, and she has to connect on combat in order for your instant or sorcery to have Storm. Super important. So we got to get through combat. So on the next slide, I just want to share some ideas on how to win with Storm, Force of Nature, as your commander. So the idea right here is just to show you what you can do with those instants or sorcery spells at the point when you want to have them have a storm count. I think you can build your deck any way you want to. Feel free to share your win con. There's a bunch of win cons. Some win cons are going to work better than others compared to meta. But these I feel like are the general four. You have burn spells that you can storm off. You got mill sorceries that you can storm off. And gold wide token sorcery and instant spells that can go off. And clone spells that are instants or sorceries that you can storm off. So literally you can clone a beastie creature 3 or 4 times. It might be a devastating creature. I don't know how you're going to build your win con. So in this video, I'm really going to show you ideas for win cons, but how to construct your early and mid game for this deck. But otherwise, take the ideas and just craft it yourself. Let's go. So one card that you can go wide with and create a bunch of creature tokens is Awaken the Wilds. For X mana, 2 green, sorcery, create X/1/1 green forest dryad land creature tokens. This card is super awesome, right? Not only are they 1/1 dryad creatures, they're forests, so they tap for mana. Okay, so you're literally creating mana that you can storm off. So imagine creating 4 of these tokens with a storm count of 3. That's 12 tokens on the battlefield that are forest dryad lands. It's 12 new mana that can be set up for another X spell or a bigger spell, such as Clone Legion on the right hand side here. For 9 mana, it's a sorcery. For each creature target player controls, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Wow. So imagine that card being stormed off. Yeah. These are just options for you for your win cons. So next up, we got Jaya's Immolating Inferno. Tap X, 2 red, legendary sorcery. All that means is you need a legendary creature on the battlefield. Honestly, it looks super cool. You just imagine Storm in the middle of that fire. That's something she... Ooh, would that be Jubilee? Not Jubilee. What's her name? Phoenix. That would be more like Phoenix, not Storm. But anyway, y'all can tell me in the comments. Jaya's Immolating Inferno deals X damage to each of up to 3 targets. So this card has a storm count of 3, and you pump 5 into it. That's almost like a crackle with power. You literally can create a crackle with power, but probably better because crackle with power needs targets, and you can't have too many targets, or you need a lot of targets if you really pump a lot of mana into it. Anyways, that's a conversation for another day. Back to Maddening Cacophony on the right-hand side. For 2 mana sorcery with a kicker 4, each opponent mills 8 cards. Whoop-de-doo, not that great. If this spell was kicked, instead each opponent mills half their library rounded up. That's what I'm talking about. You got to pay the kicker cost here. So opponents milling half their library. Storm count again, another half of that, another half of that, another half of that. Then an easy little target player mills 3 cards. They're done. So yeah, you have options here on how to create win cons for Storm. So this is what I'm talking about here. Early game. What do you do with the early game? Generally, most players I feel like are always mana ramping. Whoop-de-doo. Yada yada. Cool. You see a Kodamas Reach, Sakura Tribe Elder, maybe an elf that taps for green mana, or maybe your dwarf that creates treasure tokens. That's all cool, right? But there's more you can do on the early game, turns 1, 2, and 3. So you mana ramp, but you can use these effects, these mechanics called Suspend, Foretell, and Plot. So you can forecast the weather. Anyways, these cards or these mechanics allow you to invest in mana early and play the spell on a later turn. So yes, you're probably like, the drawback is gambling. When do I play this? I don't never play it on the right time. Whatever. It's all part of playing a game of Magic. I'm going to show you several cards that have these mechanics, and you literally get to play those spells before you attack, increasing your storm count. Then all you got to do is connect with damage with storm and cast your instant or sorcery that has a storm count. Bear with me, you're going to see. Let's go. Oh, before I even go there, I just want to show you a couple mana dorks that I feel have a really good rate, a really good mana curve. For 3 mana, they tap for 2 mana. You got Gyre Engineer. For 3 mana, he's the 1/1 that taps for blue and green. Cool. You got Weaver of Currents, a 3 mana 2/2 Naga Druid. Taps for 2 colors. Great rates. Okay, so here we go. The Suspend Mechanic. Both cards, one is Mox Tantalite, the other one is Soul Talisman. I'm going to read on the one on the right-hand side first, Soul Talisman. It has Suspend 3. Tap it for 1 mana for Suspend 3. Rather than cast this card from your hand, pay 1 mana, that could be like turn 2, and exile it with 3 time counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter. When the last is removed, cast it without paying its mana cost. It's a mana rock that taps for 2 mana. It's literally a soul ring. Why this card is good? Timing. On an early turn, you paid 1 mana, 3 time counters have been removed. Let's say you're finally ready to swing with Storm. Bam, you already got a Storm count of 1 from a spell that you played earlier for low CMC. Just maximizing your mana on early turns. That's all I'm trying to get y'all to do and see here. Maximizing the mana on early turns. No mana, no spell goes unwasted. Each turn counts. Mox Tantalite does the same thing. I'm not going to even go into it. But it has a Suspend 3 and it takes 0 mana to suspend it. What? That's a free spell. Free spell on early turns that you can actually play that are valuable later on? Come on, y'all. So, back to elaborating on casting spells on time, quote unquote. I have Ecstatic Beauty here, right? It's a sorcery for 3 mana. Exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play those cards until end of turn. Put 4 time counters on each of those cards that has Suspend. Okay, so any card that does not have Suspend, you get to play until your next turn or until end of turn. Okay, so this card has Suspend 4. So you tap it early or you invest in it early with Suspend 4. Bam. Maybe four turns go by and you're ready with Storm. Bam, you already got your Storm count up 1 for a spell for 1 mana. But these are additional 3 cards. Additional 3 cards you get to use for the Storm spell. What? Just manipulating your library. That's what this card is doing. Manipulating your library, exposing more cards, impulse card draw ish. Just flipping more cards because you never know. The card that you might need to play is 2 cards deep in your library, and you wasn't able to get it. This is the card that helps. Gaia's Will for 4 mana. It's actually it's a sorcery. For 1 green mana, suspend 4. Till end of turn, you may play lands and cast spells from your graveyard. It's what Underworld Breach, pretty much, but for green. But as a suspend counter. Actually, Underworld Breach might be a little bit better than this because you have control. But like I said, we're trying to maximize value on early turns, forecast the weather, play things just explosive, just bah, 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 bah. That's what we're trying to do here. Otherwise, this card says, if a card will be put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, exile that card instead. So, you could be a victim of a wheel effect and you got cards in your graveyard and you lost your hand. But bam, Gaia's Will, that was suspended by that turn 4. You're able to cast those cards from your graveyard. Next up, we got Inevitable Betrayal. Suspend 3 for 3 mana, 2 blue and a colorless. It says search target opponent's library for a creature card and put that card onto the battlefield under your control. Then that player shuffles. Yeah. You're just taking cards. That's it. You're just taking people's best creatures. But, you maximizing value on an early turn. Rousing Reframe for 5 mana. It's a sorcery. Add red mana for each card in target opponent's hand. This is like a Jessica's Will-ish. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. That is great. So if you tap, if you play this, when it's played at the beginning of your upkeep, that red mana does not empty into your pool, even when you go to combat, when you go to post combat, you still have it. Just a beginner's tip: when you tap mana in your pre-combat main phase, that's the phase that you have it. Okay. And then when you go to combat, you don't get to use that mana into combat. It empties on each phase. So that's why this card is super important when it says you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. Okay, so now we're on to plot. I got to show you 2 creature cards that are plot enablers, right? We got Lost on the Range. Yeah, y'all can tell me how to pronounce that. It has War 2/1/1 Homunculus. Man, these are tongue twisters. Anyway, you may look at the top card of your library anytime. The top card of your library has plot. The plot cost is equal to its mana cost. You may plot non-land cards from the top of your library. These are all cards, or these are abilities that you can store cards for later turn uses and cast them later on time with Storm. Doc, Arlock, Grizzled Genius, Simic Colors, Bear Druid. Spells you cast from your graveyard cost 2 less to cast, or from exile cost 2 less to cast. This is great. 2 less to cast a card from exile or your graveyard. All those flashback costs. Anything that has a graveyard ability to reanimate it. Come on, man. Anyway, plotted cards from your hand cost 2 less. Let me show you these plot cards. Come on, let's go. So we have Lock and Load for 3 mana sorcery. Draw a card, then draw a card for each other instant sorcery you've cast this turn. So this is playing off of your Storm count because, you're trying to play, low CMC instants and sorcery spells so you can get your Storm count higher. This has plot 4. So now I'm going to officially read what plot is. Plot says you may pay 4 mana and exile this card from your hand. Cast it as a sorcery on a later turn without paying its mana cost. Plot only as a sorcery. So on an early turn, let's say you're not ready for Storm, you tap in 4 mana, then the following turns, you're ready to play Storm. This is a spell that you've invested in. That's what's good. Investment, investment, investment. I feel like a financial advisor with this deck. Anyways, let's move on to Make Your Own Luck. For 5 mana, a little steep, sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may exile a non-land card from among them. If you do it, it becomes plotted. Put the rest into your hand. You may cast as a sorcery on a later turn without paying this mana cost. Okay, not only are you looking at the top 3 cards, you may exile a non-land card from among them and it becomes plotted. You get to choose which spell you want to play later on. This is disgusting because let's say you get one of your win con spells and it becomes plotted, and you do the entire sequence with Storm, attack, swing, connecting combat. This card that you plotted is the card that you want to storm off with? You tell me. You tell me how that's not hot. Y'all got to realize in Simic Colors, it is great at manipulating your deck. Top deck manipulation is blue. You can do that. You can do that. So now we're getting to the cards that have the Foretell Mechanic, right? First up, we got Delayed Blast Fireball for 3 mana, instant. Delayed Blast Fireball deals 2 damage to each opponent and each creature they control. If the spell was cast from exile, remember the doc, the Bear Druid, cards you play from exile cost 2 less. You thank me later. It deals 5 damage to each opponent and each creature they control instead. Foretell cost is 6 mana here. During your turn, you may pay 2 mana and exile this card from your hand face down. Cast it on a later turn for its Foretell cost. So, this is how you play this card. You got an option. For 3 mana, you deal 2 damage to your opponent and each creature they control. Okay? You got 3 options here. Next up, you can pay 2 mana and exile this card. Do this on an early turn, right? Then, when you are ready for Storm and you want to storm this card, you're paying 6 mana. So imagine storming off with a instant spell that does 5 damage to each creature your opponents control in them. This 3 times, that could be 15 damage. 6 mana is a little steep, but that's pretty worth it. But also, you can pay less by having cost reducers, such as that Dark Bear Druid. Just saying. Next up, Alrund's Epiphany. For 7 mana, it's a sorcery. Create 2/1/1 blue-red bird creature tokens with flying. Take an extra turn after this one. Exile Alrund's Epiphany. Foretell, 6 mana. Same scenario. You either play right now for 7 mana, or you invest 2 mana, exile the card, and play it later for its Foretell cost for 6 mana. So next up, we got the mid game, right? These are turns 4, 5, 6. What are you doing on 4, 5, and 6? Combat phase. What's important about the combat phase, you need to connect with Storm so you can use her Storm ability, right? So one option is to make her unblockable. We got a couple spells to make her unblockable, right? So next 2 things is extra turns or extra combats. I like to bring up the arguments that each one has its pros and cons. So I'm going to show you cards that are extra combats and extra turns and help you decide which route you would like to go. Let's go. So if you want to do extra combats with Storm, just remember you will not be able to untap all your lands, right? Get a new upkeep, okay, and reset your mana pool. So that is the downfall of extra combats. You're literally at the phase of combat to eventually post-combat to eventually in-step. These 2 cards here are extra combat phases. So we got Seize the Day, super popular. Sorcery, untap target creature. At this main phase, there's an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. Cool. Flashback for 3 mana. Bring it back, do the same thing again. Storm count, yada, yada, yada. That's all great, fine, and dandy. Okay, Overpowering attack for 5 mana. It has the free running ability for 3 mana. You may cast a spell for its free running cost if you dealt combat damage to a player this turn with an assassin or commander. Storm is your commander. Okay? So imagine getting an extra combat phase for 3 mana. Ooh, that is great rate. Untap all creatures you control that attack this turn. Is your main phase or an additional combat phase after this phase, followed by the additional main phase. So I would say if you're trying to do extra combat phases, that is great. Just make sure you have a very strong commander, as in her 3/4 body is not strong enough to take out one person for commander damage. She has to be hit with a buff spell, like Pump Her Up. Because otherwise, 21 divided by 3 is 7. That's 7 times. And there's 3 players out there. So what? You do the math. 63 damage that you have to do? No. You better give her double strike. You better give her +5, +0, something. Cool. So we got the unblockable cards here. Enter the Enigma for 1 blue mana, sorcery. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. Draw a card. That's crazy. That's crazy. Make your creature unblockable and draw a card. That's a cantrip to do all that, and it adds to your storm count. Okay, so yeah, you need to play this before you go to combat. Next up, we got Slip Through Space. It does the same thing. Moving on. Next up, we got Distortion Strike. For 1 blue mana, it's a sorcery. Target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn and can't be blocked. Cool. Same thing we've been doing all day, but it has Rebound. Rebound literally allows you to cast a spell on the beginning of your next upkeep. That is awesome, which allows you to add to your storm count for Storm. So that's a free spell for, it's a 2-for-1 on following turns. That's great. Wedding Invitation. This is one of my favorite cards. Very valuable, utilitarian, great card. For 2 mana, it's an artifact. When it ETBs, draw a card. Sack it. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. If it's a vampire, it also gains lifelink. We're not worried about that. Why this card is so great in my mind, for 2 mana on an early turn, you get to draw a card. Great. On later turns, when you need to do damage to an opponent and you need to get through, you just sack this and give your creature unblockable. Your opponents are not trying to destroy this. This goes under the radar. This goes under the radar all the time. Nobody's going to waste a freaking destroy artifact on that. So next up we have the extra turn spells. Time Warp for 3 mana, 2 blue, sorcery. Target player takes an extra turn after this one. I like this card because it says target player. If you want to help out a friend, you can choose an opponent to have an extra turn. Otherwise, you're choosing yourself, realistically. Why I like extra turns? Because you get to reset your mana. You get a new upkeep. These are all phases that you might have additional triggers on other permanents. Okay? Like, that's why I like extra turns more over extra combat phases. Because I'd rather keep resetting and keep seeing a new card at the beginning of my upkeep. Next up, I feel like Stitch in Time is a very flavorful, fun card. It's fun. It's a sorcery. Flip a coin. If you win the flip, take an extra turn after this one. So if this card has a storm count of 5, you're flipping 5 coins to see if you get an extra turn. I know it doesn't even make sense to play, but it is a fun card. You like to have fun in Magic. Somebody's going to add it. I don't see why not. Okay. So at the very end here, if you want me to actually officially release my deck list, I just need y'all to let me know in the comments below. Just say deck list. If I see enough deck lists, I'm talking about at least 10. I need to see that interaction. Don't leave me hanging, y'all. Because y'all watched the video. I already got over 1,000 views. Anyways, I recommend 36 to 38 lands. Anytime you have a commander of 4 mana, I say 36 to 40 lands, depending how comfortable you feel with your deck. Personally, I'm in that 36 38 range. Uh, I also recommend 3 cost reducers for this type of deck. The reason why, cost reducers are more efficient and effective, in my opinion, versus mana ramping up to 10, 12 mana, right? If you've ever been a spell slinger type of player, cost reducers are just more effective across the board. You're reducing 1 on each spell. So I like to maximize the value of each spells on each turn. Next up, you should have about 4 unblockable spells. I just gave you 4 in this video. So make sure you can draw those cards and swing with combat and connect to do your storm card effect. And 12 to 16 card draw effects here. Yeah, yeah. This is super important because if you're not drawing cards, you're not able to play the deck at all. That's in general. And honestly, with Storm, she is a combination of blue and all these other colors. Blue, you want to be able to draw cards to actually play spells. And, like, this is my humble opinion. Storm is going to be a tricky commander for a lot of players to play because if you're not protecting her, she will be removed. And you need a lot of different activities, effects to get to the storm like effect for that card. So not only do you need the card, you need to cast other spells beforehand. So you're limited to the amount of mana in your pool, and you have to go to combat, and you have to deal combat damage. That's a lot. I know she's flying in vigilance, but players out there have ornithopters that can block her and just ruins your turn. So thank you for watching the video. This is my deck tech on Storm, Force of Nature EDH. If you want me to make a video of my Storm Dragon's Approach idea, write Dragon's Approach at the very bottom in the comments section. So not only will I give you the deck list for this Storm video, but also make a video for Dragon's Approach with Storm. Ooh, ooh. Because if you watch the 5 best pickups, which should be in this top right hand corner for Storm, I mentioned the last card is Dragon Storm that has the Storm count on it. So pretty much this is a Dragon's deck with Storm. Who wants to see that idea? Let me know in the comments below. Write deck list and Dragon's Approach, and I'll know what you're talking about. Enjoy the video. Hit like, comment, subscribe. Peace out, y'all.